Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women Like Me Story and Business Podcast, where we celebrate stories, success, and the spirit of women in business. I'm your host, Julie Fairhurst, and I thank you all for being here with us today. I'm super excited today. I have such a lovely lady. I don't know her very well, but our paths have crossed a few times, and then she agreed to be a guest on the podcast. So I'm so excited to have her. Her name is Sally Thibault, and she is from Canada. I think she's French Canadian, but living in Vancouver.
No, I'm Australian actually.
Completely wrong. Australian, but with a French sounding last name.
Yeah,
Okay,
just for just for confusion for everybody.
it'll keep everybody on our toes. So did you grow up in Australia?
Yeah, I'm an Australian married to a Canadian.
Ah, got
And
you.
we actually lived in Australia for 43 years. We're still
Wow.
married. And
Wow.
our children were all dual citizens. And so one by one, they've just moved back to Canada for some unknown reason.
Oh,
and, and
wow.
they weren't coming back. So we had to move here.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Sally, if you don't mind?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so as I said, I'm Australian. I met my husband actually in Edmonton in 1979.
Ah.
I was traveling through Edmonton in December. Lord only knows why. I'm an Australian girl, and I thought, just a light coat would be nice and some high-heeled shoes. So I met my husband in 1979. We were married in 1982. We lived for a little while in Canada, but moved to Australia to grow for our children to grow up by the ocean, actually. So we lived on the Gold Coast in Australia, right actually on the ocean, overlooking the ocean.
Beautiful.
And our kids are dual citizens. And so one by one, they came here. My youngest came here first to study dance at Harbour Dance, downtown Vancouver. My son, who we'll talk about, met a girl online. Oh. Anyway, they've been together 10 years and married, and lovely. And then my middle daughter said, well, if they're there, I want to be there too. And so she came 5 years ago and ended up getting married in September to a lovely Canadian. So
Oh,
we moved
beautiful.
here.
Oh, well, what else can you do? I've been to Australia once, and it takes a very long time to get there.
Oh,
Yeah.
and for Julie, for us, it was really COVID when
Mm,
everything was locked down, and
yeah.
Australia was very locked down, as you know. And I often thought, if something had happened to one of the children or something had happened to us, we couldn't have got to each other. And it was then we
Yeah.
really made the decision we didn't want to be separated from
Yeah.
them.
Yes.
It took a little while to make the decision, as you could realize, being older
Yeah.
parents. But we came here in November 2023, and it's been the best decision we ever made. I just love it here. I really love
Oh.
living here, and I love being close to them too, even
Oh.
though the cold was a little bit challenging to get used to.
Yes.
But I actually really like the changing seasons. I love that.
Yes.
We didn't have that in
Yeah.
Australia because we were
No.
subtropical. So it's been the best decision we've ever made.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys are here, and it sounds exciting, like a whole new adventure for everyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I wanted to start off, Sally, talking about your books because, of course, I'm Women Like Me, and we do a lot of books. So you've got three books that you've published.
Two books, and one will be published later on 2025.
Okay, so you've
Fingers
got
crossed it
so
will
one
be.
that you're working on, and two.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us about the two that you've got published so far?
Okay, so the first book is a book called David's Gift, Asperger's Life and Love. And I wrote that book following my son's diagnosis of autism. It's now called autism. We don't use the terminology Asperger's syndrome anymore. And it was really the story of our family's journey, in particular me coping as a mother and what I went through at a time when there was very little known about autism. In fact, when David was diagnosed, it was 1 in 600 children. There's now it's down
Mhm.
about 1 in 135, 1 in 35. And so it was a really trying time, very emotionally draining. I have two other children. And we went through things like the global financial crisis. Everything kind of just happened. Um, And during that time, I'd kept journals the whole entire time, from literally the day he was diagnosed. I had kept journals. And so when we actually had, got him out of school and through university, a friend of mine said, you should write about your journey. And I actually had only decided to write that book to hand to my family. I thought, so they know the story. They know what we went through.
Right.
And little did I know at the time, because it was the very first Autism Awareness Day, was actually the day the week prior to me launching the book. And that catapulted me onto national media. I ended up with 2 guest spots on 2 different radio stations. I was then taken around Australia to run seminars, workshops, and presentations to help healthcare providers and teachers and families to understand the impact of autism on families. That was my specialty, not necessarily strategies for children with autism, but for people to see beyond the diagnosis, for the family that sits behind it.
Wow.
So that was the first one. And so from there, I ended up a career. I come out of, my background is in in fitness and health. So I've been a fitness instructor for, at that stage, 25, 30 years. And when David was diagnosed, I had to step out of the industry, because back in those days, there was no funding. There were very few therapists. We had to do everything ourselves with the guidance of fantastic occupational therapists and speech therapists, but we really kind of lived on our own to do it. And I couldn't do it and have the other 2 girls and be in a gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was just impossible. So I stepped out of the industry for a period of time, which, we might get onto this later, but was soul destroying for me in one way, because I let go of a career I absolutely loved. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, the best decision we ever made, as far as for David in particular, and who I became along the way. We called it David's gift because it was a gift. It was a gift to me to become a far better parent than I could have possibly imagined. Not only for him, but for our other 2 girls as well. And it was in writing the book that became very cathartic, when I could actually look back and say, oh my gosh, I don't believe we survived that. Now I look at the book and realize now what I was also going through was perimenopause at the time. And so having little knowledge about perimenopause, little knowledge about autism, it was really, really an emotional, it was like a house was like a volcano, ready to just erupt at any point in time. Mother Nature's greatest joke is to put a pubescent child in the same house a perimenopausal mother. Watch the fireworks just take off.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I loved how you named the book His Gift, because it puts and it should be a positive spin on a stressful and unknown back in back in the 70s or the 80s?
No, he was diagnosed in the beginning of 1997, just when he was about to go into grade 7 or year 7 at school.
Yeah.
And prior to that, because the internet only came into being in 1996.
Yeah.
And so, for years prior, I was always being called up to the school because there was something going on. And then I'd go from one therapist to another, for one medical practitioner to another, to be told off, and that's just your parenting.
Yes.
Have you looked at taking some parenting courses, which was even the worst? Like, I was not only dealing with all that, but to think I'm a terrible parent. Like, what did I came from a loving family. I'm one of 5 children. What did I get so wrong? And it was just, the day he was diagnosed, he was 12, and I wanted to go down to our local store and buy a big neon sign that said, it's autism, not my parenting.
Yes. Yeah.
And the judgment that you go through, and then the self-doubt that happened because of that. As I said, fortuitously, I actually kept a journal of the whole entire time. So when I came to writing the book, I was reading through my journals thinking, I can't believe I survived that. Oh, I'd forgotten all about. Oh my God, I remember that day.
Yes.
So the process of writing, which I think, as you know, and I know I've heard you speak about before, that process of getting those words down, get it out of your head so you can
Yes.
look at things objectively, was really emotional because I'd forgotten what we'd been through, but at the same time, very empowering because I wasn't the same person. I wasn't the same person that started this journey and who ended it.
I think that we either look at the positives, do the best that we can, and go through it, or we don't. And I believe, just like you said, some things are the best things that could have ever happened. You know, even with terrible COVID, there was a lot of good that happened, you know, with COVID. And here you and your husband have reunited with your kids and come back to Canada. And so we just never know what's going to happen. I know one of the things you wrote in your um, I guess story to me about what we could talk about was you mentioned that you were contemplating driving your car, your vehicle to the water, and I'm
And
assuming
off the edge
driving.
of and off the edge of the boat ramp.
I think there's so many women that I've spoken to, so many women where they're like, you know, I'm driving down the road and all I could think of is I just want to drive my car in the ditch.
Yeah.
You know,
100%. You know, that night actually lives really, really strongly in my mind. I think we all reach a point where we have a breaking point. And I often think of that. You know, I was very fortunate to be in a loving relationship. I had my mother had passed away, but my dad was very supportive. My family was very supportive. But because I couldn't figure it out, because I thought it was all about me, I just thought, what's the point? What's the point? I now understand perimenopause, and I understand, because that's the area I now work in, helping women through that perimenopause or menopausal stage, that suicide ideation is actually quite strong for many women going through perimenopause.
Oh, I
And
didn't realize
what it
that.
is a lack of estrogen in the brain. Our brain function changes and we can't think clearly, the brain fog. So I now understand that. But that particular night, what had happened was David was in grade 10 at the time, and he was bullied constantly at school, just all the time. And it had come to a head one day when he came home with bruises all down his arm. And I said, what happened? He told me about this boy that used to punch him in the arm all the time when they were lining up outside the classroom. And because I just, I wanted to just go to the school. And he said, Mum, don't do that. Don't, because if you say anything, it'll make it worse. Round about that time, for that night, then I'm trying to get him to do his homework, and he wouldn't do his homework. And there was an assignment due the next day. And then the other two girls were crying because we were fighting. And then my husband and I were fighting. He was saying, can you just settle down, calm down? And I was like, I've just had enough of everybody. Grabbed my car keys and just got in the car and drove to the end of this lake. And what I often think that there was a guardian angel sitting on my shoulders that night in the form of my mother. She had died. She had passed away some years before that. And I remember thinking in this moment of clarity, how would my husband explain that to my children if after a huge argument, your mother just ends it? Like, what would the children live with? How would, and I thought, that's not me. And so I remember walking back home after a couple of hours of driving home, walking in the door. And I said to my husband, we have to figure this out. We just have to figure this. I don't know what we can do. It was at the end of the global financial crisis. We'd lost our house, financially really struggling at the same time. And I'd taken a job as a telemarketer. Nothing wrong with telemarketers, but
no, not at all. But I don't see it.
Soul destroying, because I needed to be available because school would be calling me all the time for something, to come up and see something about David, or to drop into occupational therapy or speech therapy, plus trying to get him to do his homework. And the very next day I walked into the school and told them I was going to pull my son out of school. And I did. I just walked in and said, this isn't working. I don't know what's going to work, but him being in this school isn't working. And the principal at the time was actually really nice. He said, we just don't have the support in place to assist David. There's not enough funding for him. So we brought him home, and he actually stayed in his room for 3 months. He'd just come out for dinner, and then he'd go back into his room, and I just check on him, make sure he was okay. And then bit by bit, he started to come out. Then he started to want to come shopping with me, and then he wanted to come to family picnics with us. And then we found in Australia we have a TAFE college, which is like vocational college. They had a year 10 literacy and numeracy program, and we enrolled him in that. And then he went on to there. He did a number of certificates in computer programming. He then went on to do a diploma in multimedia, which gave him enough credit points to get into university to study film and TV. And there were no more prouder parents in that graduation ceremony when he walked across the stage with his Bachelor of Film and TV. We took a long way to get there, but we got there. And
yes.
And who I became along the way, I became a much less judgmental person. I see parents in stores now, and their kids are having a meltdown, and I just go and give mum a hug, or look, I get it. I get it where you're at. But it also gave me the impetus to decide what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
So when we released the book, and at 4 years, I spent, traveling around Australia and doing all these seminars. And when I gave David the book to read originally, before we launched it, he sat up all night and read it.
Oh.
And he came downstairs the next day. He said, Mum, I just want to talk about one thing. And that was the night at the lake. And he said, was that my fault? And I said, no, it wasn't your fault, honey. It was my fault. And he said, you need to tell this story. However, Mum, if any time I want you to stop talking about it, can you give me your guarantee you will? I said, sure, thinking like it never happened.
Yes.
Sure enough. One night he walked in, can you stop talking about it now? I'm like, okay. I had one more conference to be a keynote speaker in. I thought that was it. Okay.
Wow.
I had to honor him.
Yes, of course.
I'd said I was going to.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, God, what now? And that's when I went back into working in supporting women through weight loss and fitness and health and coaching.
So is that the time? So what's the time frame when your second book came out?
So the second book came out in 2017.
Oh, so not 17? Too long ago.
No, things always happen serendipitously,
yes.
Don't they? I mean, so not long afterwards of this, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? I'll go back into coaching, but a friend of mine, actually, it was an accountability group for a business coaching group I was on, and she was from New York. And we used to hop on these calls every week, and she was studying EFT, emotional freedom techniques, often called tapping. And Susan was a really powerful businesswoman. She ran an enormous sales organization. And when she started talking about EFT, and I'm like, oh, don't give me that. I'm not going to go there. It looks stupid because you've got a tap on your face. And like I had been through so much with David, I thought, no, unless it's evidence-based, and I'm not interested. Anyway, persistent as she was, she did a session for us one day, and it was just blew my mind. Absolutely just changed so much. And so I'm like, oh, what is this? I want to learn how to do it. And it just so happened 2 weeks later, the only emotional freedom techniques trainer in Australia was actually putting on a 4-day seminar just like an hour away from us. So I did that, fell in love with it, became an EFT master trainer where I trained healthcare providers, psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, doctors, and teachers to use the modality. And then decided that I wanted to do my own. I wanted to incorporate that and work with women going through menopause and fitness and health. And so the things are combined in the work that I do now.
So with that, so with the tapping, there's positive language that you're saying as well.
Yes. So how EFT works, it works on the premise of releasing the emotional connection to past stories that you tell yourself. So every time you do something, for instance, if you're 2 years old, put your hand on a hot stove and it burns your fingers, you pull away. That story is registered in the hippocampus and amygdala, which are now reptilian brain. So the next time you go to put your hand on the stove, you remember that it's hot, so you're not going to do it again.
Right.
However, it also records all those things that were said to you when you were a kid in the playground, and it just, it just hasn't gone away. Somebody told you weren't smart. Someone told you you'd never amount to anything. Someone told you were ugly, when you were 14. That story still sits there. Now, for many women, that can be enough to hold them back from stepping out to be truly successful, because what if, that's where, the imposter syndrome comes from.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough.
Yeah.
That's just a story you're telling yourself.
Yes.
And so what we do in EFT is we go in and we tap on the emotion around that story. So that's the first thing. We tap on to release the emotional connection. And under MRI, it's been noticed that when people tap, saying the truth of how they actually feel, the neurons, just for a minute, rewire in the brain. And then we do, once you get that emotional connection down to a 0 or 2, so it's not triggering, we reframe and we put a new set of beliefs in. So EFT works brilliantly for anything that's holding you back, and if something's not going right, okay, what's going on? What's the story I'm telling myself here? Where did that start? And normally for most of it's childhood.
Yes.
And believe it, a lot of parent issues. and that's not to make our parents wrong. Many of them are doing the best they could possibly do, but they may have said something to you as a joke and you didn't see it as a joke.
That's right.
Or it was a time you felt very vulnerable. We had a saying in our house. My mother used to say it all the time: a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips.
Yes.
So I grew up believing that anything that I ate put on weight. I'm thinking, where did that come from? And then I did some tapping. Went,
well, it's so interesting you say that, because I have a friend whose mother told her, you shouldn't wear that. Your behind is too big. And her entire life, she thought her behind was too big. But it wasn't. No. But it was that one little sentence. Yeah. And I don't think her mom didn't say it in cruelty or anything. It was just like, you might want to wear something different that doesn't, it's not fitting you the best, or whatever she meant.
Doesn't enhance your beautiful figure. You could be like, that's where most mothers come from, right? They just want their daughters to look lovely.
Yes.
But that's the thing, and oftentimes when I'm working with clients, what happens is that we'll find family sayings that just register, and then when we tap, they can go, actually, that's not true. Why have we been hanging on to this? It especially shows up for women in leadership roles.
How long do you think that it takes for when someone realizes that they've got a problem, an issue that they want to clean up from their past? So how long does it normally take people, like on an average, if you know?
5 minutes.
Really? That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's really good.
So what's really interesting is the original person who developed this EFT that we talked about, a guy called Gary Craig, was actually a Stanford engineer, and watched another gentleman, a psychologist, working with a woman with severe fear of water, and watched him tapping. So he talks about our palace of possibilities. We have this palace of possibilities, but it's overshadowed by all these writings on our wall.
Yes.
And so what we do, what I find with EFT, what you do, from the time I started with EFT, just after David said, don't do this anymore, I probably tapped every day for about 4 years. And again, recorded it all, because we have these things, what they call tabletops and table legs. So you could have a belief about if I speak in public, people are going to laugh at me. Right. And it's held up by numerous beliefs. Right. So you can tap and get rid of one belief, tap and get rid of another belief, but it takes sometimes 4 or 5 different beliefs and different incidences to make that belief collapse. So you can get rid of one. For instance, I did a tapping in my group last week, which was talking about intuitive eating, which is, allowing your body to tell you what to eat, not your physical, your emotional brain. And the women on the call were saying, oh my God, why did I think chocolate's fattening? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
As we were going through it. And that's the thing. We often don't know what's the belief that's holding you back. There'll be something. It's like body, relationship, and bank account. 3 big things. And so if those 3 things, if something's wrong in that area, it's just a belief.
Yes.
And so you tap on, what's this belief that's causing me to shy away from speaking up, or I can't release this last 20 pounds, or I don't have the motivation to exercise, which is the area that I work in. So what's the belief? And normally it's we hide behind our beliefs because they keep us safe.
Yeah.
Gay Hendricks in his book, The Big Leap, talks about that. So every time you want to get to the next level, you're going to go through a whole nother layer of beliefs you've got to get rid of to go to that, because you feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
And failing privately by having these beliefs is a lot safer than failing publicly.
Yes, absolutely.
So
I'm just sitting here in awe of you, because I'm very much of the belief that half the beliefs we have, we don't even know why we have them, but we just have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. That was the thing I think that I found in this work with EFT. And I've done a lot of personal development work before this came along, as probably we all did in the 80s. It was very much that sort of personal development era, Tony Robbins and all that stuff we went through. Dr. Wayne Dyer, all that stuff. But what I love about this is once you learn how to do it, you can do it yourself. And then the empowerment comes from when you recognize, hang on, where did that belief come from? Why did I just say that?
Mm-hmm.
Or why did I just think that? And when you go, okay, wait a minute, where did that come from? And it's about being really aware of the steps you take, the things you do during the day. Right now, I think we're all living in this low-grade stress and anxiety because we don't know what the heck's going to happen, the next hour.
Yes.
We just don't know. And so our cortisol levels are heightened, our adrenaline levels are heightened. You mightn't feel it.
Yeah.
But you're reaching for that last glass of wine, or suddenly you really need something sugary to eat, or you find yourself being stuck in procrastination. And all that is that low-grade stress and anxiety, because we don't know what's going on. So then using EFT to lower that, like lower those cortisol levels, lower those adrenaline levels, so you can think more clearly.
That is just so it's too easy.
I know, right? Shouldn't I be spending thousands of dollars on therapy? No.
I believe that. I think that's just amazing. Do you teach classes still, or what do you do?
Yeah, so I have an online program now. After I go back, so going back to that time when I suddenly realized one day that I was going through, or just had been through, perimenopause and onto menopause. I gained 20 pounds. I was just a mess,
Yeah.
And the doctor, and I'm thinking, because my background is in fitness and health, I thought, okay, I'll just restrict calories and I'll run more. Didn't work. That was sore knees and sore hips and tired, when I began to do more work in this area, I realized that our wellness as we move through menopause has to be more than food and diet. It's diet and exercise. It's who we become on this journey of menopause, because we become somebody so different. In fact, our brain actually rewires during menopause because of the lack of estrogen. So that's why brain fog. That's why we get brain fog.
Right.
And so then the neurons rewire and we come out of it. I heard a great quote the other day that said we come out of it caring much more deeply, but caring less.
Yes.
Because that's what we do. We become this just very wise, intuitive women. And so I created what I call the 10 principles of wellness. And that we're looking at, eating intuitively. How do we learn to do that? Because women are very intuitive if they have knowledge.
Yes.
And knowledge is really important about, for instance, nutrition, but then you listen to your body. So, you fast intermittently, exercise purposefully. I've created a whole series of what we call 9-minute workouts. It also includes, tapping daily, meditation, and discovering your purpose. Who do you become now in this journey? Because, for many of us, we're reaching our 50s, our children are leaving home. And I can remember the day my middle daughter moved to Canada. So my youngest daughter gone first, eldest child next, and then my third. And I remember sitting on the couch and saying to my husband, now what?
Yeah.
What? Like, in a way, it was like, I've got no excuses anymore.
Yeah.
I can't say I've got to drop everything and go pick them up from school. I can't say, I need to help them, navigate their lives because they'd all left home.
Yeah.
And it was really, going very deep and understanding where was my soul lit up?
Mm-hmm.
And it was fitness and health. So, and for all women, it's rediscovering their life purpose as they move through this menopause stage, because you, as I said, you think much more deeply and care less about what other people think of you. So it's a magical time. I was just talking to my sister about half an hour ago, her youngest daughter's moving, and she said, all of a sudden I'm by myself. I said, what a magical time.
Exactly. Yes.
What a magical time. You're not beholden to anybody.
Yes.
She's separated, divorced from her husband, but I said, this, you can do anything you want. And she was like, oh,
yes.
But the bottom of that lies, you have to be healthy.
That's right. Yes, for sure. I had a girlfriend, the same thing. So ended a relationship, got fired from a job, and dog died in the same week.
Oh.
And I said, congratulations. Your life is just going to go in a super fantastic direction.
Yeah.
If you follow it.
Exactly. Well, first of all, you've got to get real sad and crying.
Yes, of course. But
then it is.
Yes.
I was sitting at a networking event just recently, and there were two younger girls sitting across. Younger girls. Since when do we call women in their 40s younger? I don't know. But anyway. Two women in their 40s sitting opposite me and asked me what I did. I said, well, I'm a menopause wellness coach. And this one woman said, I'm terrified of menopause. And I said, why? She said, I only hear really bad things. I said, you are so lucky. You don't realize how fortunate you are. You are going to go through this with way more knowledge than we ever had. The research that's coming out, especially here in British Columbia, who I believe are ahead of everybody else in Canada, with the BC Women's Health Clinic opening up, lots of research into menopause and wellness, and also HRT will be free here in April. So there's all these things that are happening.
Yes.
You don't need to be scared of it. It's an exciting time of your life.
Yes.
I look back on those times, going through all of that. And I remember sitting in a board meeting one day. I just started to cry.
Aww.
What's wrong? I don't know everything. And there's all these men running around. Do we need to give us some time off? Can we get a wine? I just couldn't stop crying.
Aww,
and now I recognize that's what it is.
Yes.
Stress levels were heightened levels. I was going through perimenopause. My estrogen and testosterone levels were all over the place.
Yeah.
And so that actually is interesting, because that's where in the cost to the workplace is enormous when we don't understand what women going through. And 51% of the population will go through this.
Yes.
They will go through this.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's my passion now, as you can probably hear, because I love working with women at this age. They're smart, they're intuitive, wise, and they get it. Okay.
Yes.
Get it. I love it.
I know for myself, I was in sales and marketing for 34 years, and then I got extremely burnt out. But then I thought, well, what the heck am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do with the next phase of my life? And I actually was able to retire in February 2014 officially, and do Women Like Me full time. But it was a process for me to get here, and it was a 5-year process. But and little hints were along the way of what I should be doing, and it's listening to that. I never thought in 20 years ago, if somebody told me I'd be doing podcasts and writing books with women and all of it, I would have said, are you insane? I can't even spell. Here, so I agree with you, and I hope that any woman who's listening takes this to heart and realizes that it's not the end of your life, it's actually the beginning of your life, because you're not really living for everybody else anymore.
100%. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing too is that women went through menopause in the early 20s. What's that, last century?
Yeah.
1920. So 100 years ago,
Yeah.
women went through menopause around about the age of 53. We actually go through menopause earlier now, but they only lived to an average of 72.
Right.
Women now go through menopause about 2 years early, 51, 52, but will live up to 85.
Yeah.
Now, that's the average, but if you care for your body, do the strength exercises, focus on your well-being, and how are you going to spend that time from 55, say,
Yeah.
to 85? What are you going to do for the next 30 years of your life?
Exactly. That's what my whole stress was all about. What am I going to do? What could I want to do something. I don't want to, I'm not a TV watcher. Like, what am
Yeah,
I going to do?
yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that, I think that we should get more excited instead of
No,
stressed out,
and you know
just,
what? I think more women, I would love to see more women in leadership positions
yes.
at this age.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, many women are struggling and confronted with ageism in the
Yes.
workplace.
Yes.
And then on top of that, going through menopause. And so anybody with 3 degrees who's 35 years old and might come in on top of them, that really impacts on their confidence. And
Yes.
yet, look, the world's a mess.
Hmm.
We need
Yes.
more women,
Yeah.
postmenopausal women,
Yeah.
to get in and say, listen, stop this. You need to negotiate. We need to figure it out. We can do that. You do it this way.
Yeah.
Because a book I read, and I can't remember the name, but it was talking about grandmothers
Ah,
and the power of and grandmothers hold the heart of the family. So in
yes.
indigenous tribes, the wise woman, the woman that's no
Yeah.
longer fertile, she
Yeah.
becomes actually the heart. So the men go off and hunt.
Yeah.
She would stay there and actually hold the community together. And
Yes.
that's what we're
Yeah.
very good at. We
Yes.
whole village together
Yes.
because we understand. We're watching young women go through what
Yeah.
they go through. I know
Yeah.
I'm not a grandmother yet, but I'm watching others, grandmothers who just, you know what, honey, it's okay. He'll
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
That. So we bring with that inane energy and that time to spend with our children. And I think my passion for this is to have more women. I'm in late 60s, nearly 70. So it's more for me like this is our time.
Yes.
This
And
is
I
really our time.
and I think that and I think what I've found is that a lot of women as we age think, well, what am I going to do? What could I possibly do? But oh my goodness, you have a life full of wisdom. There's so much that you can do. If you think back when I get some more mature ladies writing in the books, I just get blown away. And there's just we have so much wisdom and so much knowledge and then like you say that I don't really care what you think goes away. It just means the world's our oyster. And if you look back at so many women, they started and did all sorts of amazing things in their, 50s, 60s, and beyond. I think it's just I think it's exciting. I think that women just need to hone in on what their gifts are because we all have them.
Oh, and for many of us, what we do is we put all those gifts on hold while we're raising children and paying the mortgage and just,
Yes.
getting your
Yes.
teenagers home alive.
Yes.
Everything has to go. And it did for me. I mean, I had a career in the fitness industry, at a TV show, trained hundreds of instructors. But when it came to my son, I chose to put all that on the shelf because
Yes.
that was my job at the time. That was my
Right.
life purpose
Yes.
at the time.
Yes.
And I'm so glad, I'm so grateful I made that decision because,
Yeah.
you know, David's gone on to be this fabulous married man, lives in Montreal, got a lovely wife. He
Oh.
took himself up to Montreal to live in a city that was mostly French,
Yeah.
taught himself how to speak French, got a
Oh,
job.
for him.
So
Wow.
and he loves his life.
Wow.
Because the focus, I think, for us was to ensure that he was a whole person.
Yeah.
He speaks really honestly and openly about being autistic. He's very proud of it. Because, as he said, it gives him different skills that other
Yes.
people don't have.
Yes.
That skill to focus and the skill to see things, and
Yes.
this heightened sense of sound, and where he can understand what people are thinking almost.
Yeah.
He has this way of, he used to say when he was at school, he would always, out of the, I don't know how many teachers he had, probably a handful of really good teachers.
Yeah.
And he used to say they're kind to me.
Oh.
He could pick up
Yeah.
what they were thinking without having to
Yeah.
say anything. And
Oh.
the teachers that didn't get him, shut down.
Very intuitive.
Very intuitive. And so,
Yeah.
and I think that's the other thing too, like you were just talking about, we go through seasons in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a great deal, figuring out soul purpose versus life purpose. Your soul purpose is what you were born with innately, that comes with you, and you kind of wrap that soul purpose around your current life purpose. For me, my soul purpose is to teach, inspire, and entertain. And so, all through my life, I've seen how I've been managed to do that in various aspects, not always the same role.
Yeah.
But our life purpose changes, and it's just amazing to make sure that soul purpose sort of wraps itself around in whatever way you can. So, I'm really passionate about women's health for that very reason, because you can't follow your passion if you're not well.
Absolutely.
Just and I want to be able to, forever, how long my life is, I want to be standing up.
Yes.
I want to be
for
hiking.
Sure.
I want to be hiking with my grandchildren. I haven't got one yet. In 15 years' time, when I'm 83 or 4, I want to be able to do grouse grind with them. That, like, those are the things that you do now.
Yes.
So you don't become a burden on my children.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful to end with. That is just beautiful, because it's just so true. We have so many gifts, and I hope that anyone who's been listening to us is going to sit down and write out what their gifts are, because for sure they have them. Sally, I'm wondering, in closing, I like to ask my guests 5 questions before we close. Do you mind?
Certainly.
Okay, they're fun. Don't worry. Okay. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is your favorite book that inspires you in your business or in your personal life?
Definitely The Big Leap.
Oh, yes, that's
Gay Hendricks, I think I've read it 5 times.
Oh, good for you.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
It's a good one. Okay. If you could have dinner with any woman in history, who would it be and why?
Any woman. So many women.
Yeah.
Amelia Earhart's the one that comes to mind. And because I come from a generation of people who flew, she actually landed in Papua New Guinea and was there when my mother's family. So we often heard the story of Amelia Earhart and my great uncle meeting her. So that's the woman. Gets in a plane and flies around the world on her own.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's incredible.
That is incredible. Okay. What is your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
I love to go for a walk at sunset. That's my favorite thing to do. The sun comes out. I'm looking forward to being able to do that. Yeah, a walk at sunset, I think, is my favorite with my husband, and we can just kind of debrief the day, or a happy hour with a good glass of champagne.
Oh, both of those sound wonderful. The next one is, do you have a favorite motivational quote that keeps you going?
My mother wrote in a card she gave to me on my wedding day. She said, "To thine own self be true."
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. I don't know why, but that made me very teary-eyed. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's always stuck in my mind. To thine, when it all comes out, be true to yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for that one. Okay. And the last question is, if you could travel anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would you go and why?
Oh, wow. Where would I go? I think Italy.
Ooh. Nice.
And I would just like to eat pasta and drink red wine on the south coast of Italy, and just enjoy, like just being
Oh,
embraced with the culture and the
yeah.
food, and and again, of course, I love pasta, but pasta's not good for here. It's not the best, but you can eat pasta in Italy. It doesn't
It's
impact as
not the
much as it does
same.
here.
Yeah. I loved all your answers. Well, thank you so much for doing that. So I want to let everyone know that if you want to reach out to Sally, if you want to join her group or investigate what she can do to help you, in the details section of the podcast and the YouTube, you will have links to find her, all sorts of information there. So Sally, in closing, is there anything you'd like to share some wisdom with us all before we close? Not that you haven't been sharing wisdom, because you certainly have, but let's get a final word of wisdom.
Yeah, I think we are braver and smarter than we believe we are.
Mhm.
And if anything, this is a time for the rising of the feminine. And so for women listening to this is your time, because the world needs smart, wise, intuitive women.
Oh, yes.
That's it.
I love that. I just love that. Well, thank you everyone for being here with us and on this episode. We'll see you another time. And Sally, thank you. It was good. I'm left emotional. I may need some tapping. I don't know. So thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Julie. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you.